Today on Diksha, we look at what is Sanatan Dharma. We hear great stories about Sanatan Dharmic principle, and we hear stories about the great lives of people who embody Sanatan Dharmic principle. But have we ever stopped to ask ourselves, firstly, what is Sanatan Dharmic principle? And secondly, where do we find all the information about what Sanatan Dharmic principle is? And what has created the Sanatan Dharmic idea or principle? And the answer is very simple. If we look at all the great stories about all the great heroes and great people who have lived, both men and women, and in some instances even animals, we see that Sanatan Dharmic principle is something that plays out naturally in everyday life. And therein lies the answer to what Sanatan Dharmic principle is. Sanatan Dharma is life. And what we mean by life is not the limited nature of what the modern human being will call a life. Because what we call a life now is really a shortened definition for lifestyle, which is the way that we live our particular lives. And let us broaden firstly our definition of life. Life includes the way that I live right now, but it also includes the way that I want to live. And by extension, it includes the way that I intend to live. And it also includes the way that I have lived. So I will consider in my definition for a lifetime my duration of existence on earth. And by this, by extension, I mean from birth till death. So I am considering that from the time I am born or even conceived till the time that I die and my body decays or is cremated, that the being that I will know as myself and that other people around me will know as myself will be known as a lifetime. Now let's say, just for argument's sake, we will include for however long my name will live. So for those of us who, let's say, consider those with great influence, who through their actions during their living period, their actions gave rise to teachings and philosophies and ways of being socially as well as intellectually. So they have left a mark on the world. So we can even consider this in our definition. So for however long a human being exists on earth, we will consider this to be a lifetime. Now if we look at lifestyle, it is almost opposite to this, because people's lifestyle change. People's lifestyle change a lot depending on their financial circumstances, based on their educational circumstances, based on their physical location, whether it's in a particular community or a particular country. Lifestyle also includes affiliations. So if I am considered to be part of a particular group or a particular movement. And so lifetime is not to be confused or considered the same as a lifestyle. So that's our first definition. Now, Sanatan Dharmic principle concerns itself with life or a lifetime. And so it can be applied, naturally speaking, to lifestyle, but we must consider that lifestyle is merely a fraction of a person's lifetime. So naturally speaking, Sanatan Dharmic principle will apply to the lifestyle of an individual. So if we are looking at the lifetime or life of an individual, Sanatan Dharmic principle is the nature and the rules that governs a person's life. And what do we mean by govern? When we speak about the rules that govern, a lot of people will consider the social, the institutional, such as the government level or educational level, and some people will consider the family structure as being Sanatan Dharmic principle. And so we will hear very popularly, that one must honor one's parents, and that is part of Sanatan Dharma. So that's the family aspect, or respect for elders in the family, elder siblings, younger siblings, and what have you. So there's the family structure. One will consider respect for our teachers, honoring the guru. And in previous times, in eras gone by, sometimes an individual will live with their teachers in the ashrams or in the establishments of their teachers, learning a particular discipline. And so they will be away for a very long period of time from their family. And so their guru was like a second parent. And then we consider now when a person occupies, has an occupation, occupies a particular job, and that there are particular duties to perform. The whole point being in this scenario is that we consider our social responsibilities, so our family, our educational, and our professional responsibilities, as being that which falls under Sanatan Dharmic principle. Because I have defined lifestyle as being a subcategory of a lifetime, I will apply that same definition to family structure, to educational structure, and to professional structure, simply being because they occupy a fraction of a person's lifetime. Because if we consider it, the obligations to our physical parent, so before our parents die, we have particular obligations. But when our parents die, whether it be when we are young or when we are older, reasonably and generally speaking, our parents will die at a particular time in our lifetime. And so they occupy a particular fraction of our lifetime. And the same can be said when I myself, or you as the individual, have your own family. So maybe when you are 30, in your 30s, or somewhere around that period in life, there will be the marriage and then children and so on. Well, that is also a fraction of your lifetime. It may be a greater fraction, but it is a fraction. And the same can be said with education and professional sense, in that I may have a duty to my boss, which falls on a principle of, nature, but, logically speaking, people change professions, people change, let's say, job descriptions, people change companies. So professional obligation occupies a fraction of a lifetime. And so we must consider that Sanatan Dharmic principle governs our lifetime, and so naturally speaking, it will govern the fractions of our life dedicated to family life, education, and professional life, as well as the time that we spend working on ourselves, which are all subdivided. The whole point is, we consider Sanatan Dharmic principle to be that which governs the subcategories, but by default, they will govern the subcategories because those are subcategories within our lifetime, within my lifetime. So, By defining this now, we reach a point where Sanatan Dharmic principle is that which governs a life of an individual, the lifetime of an individual, in such a way that it percolates all fractions of a particular individual's lifetime. Now, why is this important? This is important to identify what is Dharma, which is a way, and what is Sanatan Dharma, which is the eternal way. The reason I say Dharma is because if I work in a particular profession, in a particular company, there's a particular way in which I need to work. There's a particular way to do things. Now, if I occupy a different position in a different company, I cannot simply take the way I worked in this company and apply it to that company. That company also has a way that they work. And so this is the setting in all scenarios. So for example, in family life, if, for example, I am supposed to always listen to the words of my parents, then at a particular point when they die, well, what happens to me as the individual? I must listen to my own reasoning. Although it may be that my parents taught me qualities and instilled values, I as the individual must think and ascertain what is the proper way to do things, and also how to pass this knowledge on to my children. Does this mean that I am taking word for word what my parents taught me and passing this on to my children? It may be, or it may not be so. The point I'm trying to make is that that is Dharma, which is a way. But if we are talking about a lifetime of an individual, then there is Sanatan Dharma, the eternal way. And so we must understand this, that Sanatan Dharmic principle are the principles of life. They apply to us as well, equally to all individuals, to all forms of life. Now we come to the point of awareness of what Sanatan Dharma is, and the awareness of the vastness of Sanatan Dharmic principle. The reason I say this is because most of the time, we consider the forces that act directly upon my happiness and my way of being. So what I would consider to be honorable and what I would consider to be worthy and unworthy, I consider these things to be Sanatan Dharmic principle. And I seem to forget that there are a lot more forces at work, simply physical forces, that influence my life that I may never even be aware of, but also forces in my life that are so strong that I can never escape them. And so, for example, emotions, our emotional state and our mental state. A lot of us are not aware of our own emotional state. So for this reason, we may seek advice. We may not be aware of our mental state, and so we will seek the counsel of someone in order to work through a particular mental process. The whole point being is that individuals during their lifetime, although we are aware that, well, we need to work on our emotions and our mental state, we are unaware of the facets that govern these states. Now, because of this, we seek happiness. So we seek to, well, be from a point of being threatened, for example, of having a risk in our life, to being in a point where we feel safe and in control. It is for this reason we look to the lives of great people. We look to the achievements of great people. It is because we are looking for an example. We are looking for guidance from someone who has achieved something far greater than I think I would have achieved in my lifetime. And so by doing this, I will look at that individual who, with well documented history, so we look at the mythological texts, the historical texts, the scriptures of the varying religions that give accounts of the trials and tribulations and the achievements of great individuals. And we look at the lives of these people and try to identify the principles that guided their lives. And so, in identifying the principles that these people lived by, we try to apply them to our lives. It is not about, for example, if I am looking at a historical account of the Ramayana or the Mahabharata, or even verses from the Bible, texts of the great kings and the testaments, or even stories of the Buddha, or any of the mythological stories of the past, I look for some form of inspiration where I see a comparable scenario. So I will see a great challenge to someone and how they, let's say, derive the strength to work through this challenge. We try to derive what was their guiding principle, what was their motivation. In doing this, we seek to draw inspiration from our scriptures. And this is the nature of Sanatan Dharmic principle in text. When we look at the ancient scriptures and try to identify what the Sanatan Dharmic principle is, it is basically we are trying to look for an applicable principle that will fit in our life. What is important to remember at this juncture, as I come to the conclusion of my point, is that we must remember that whatever we are referencing is something that applies to life. It does not apply abstractly. It is not something that applies only in a way that I may understand. Although I will apply it in a way that only I will understand or have understood the outcome to be, it is something that even if I reflect at some point in the future, I may see a different possible scenario. I may see a different meaning for the same inspiration I drew from before. The key point, as I leave today on Diksha, is that Sanatan Dharmic principle is the guiding factor of life. It is the very foundation on which life is based on. And so it is well within our ability to understand if we try and really endeavor to understand our own lives. And nothing is wrong with drawing inspiration from the scriptures as long as we can see it as being a very applicable principle in our day-to-day lives. So as always, I'd like to thank you for joining me on Diksha, right here on Sanket Television, the first Hindu TV station in Trinidad and Tobago, and your number one choice for inspirational, cultural, and spiritual programming.